am Catherine Beatrice Fernald, and I appreciate you all for coming to hear a little bit of my story. Tonight, as Sherry said, we have joining us two special guests. I'd like to introduce my granddaughter-in-law, Leah Fernald, and my great-granddaughter, Melissa Hoyt. Leah married one of my grandsons, Lauren. Lauren was the son of one of my sons named Charles Robert. I love when Leah, Melissa, and I reminisce about my life. Family is one of nature's masterpieces, and mine is so important to me. I was born Catherine Beatrice Van Nest in Great Bend, Kansas on December 26, 1878, but very quickly became Trixie, and Trixie I remain for the rest of my life. It more accurately reflected my lively and modern personality than Catherine Beatrice. When I was born, my mother, Eliza Ellen Rathburn, was 22, and my father, Cornelius Andrew Van Nest, was 23. My parents moved to Temecula with me and my sister, Polly. My future husband's parents, Charles and Sarah Fernald, and their children moved to Temecula from Maine. I met my sweetheart, their son Eugene Fernald, in Temecula, but sadly he died before we could get married. Not letting the grass grow under my feet, I was lucky enough to have been able to marry his brother, Frank Loren Fernald, instead. I was definitely ready for marriage, a husband and family at 17, and Frank was more than ready at a mature age of 35. Frank and I married in 1896. Frank was very smart, clever, handy, and creative. We made a very good team. Whatever either of us decided to do, it was okay, we just did it. He was a good husband and father, since he could turn his hand or mind to just about anything. Our life was never dull, and I was not one bit behind him in energy, imagination, and ability either. So we were very well matched, and I might say we made a very handsome couple. Ready and mature is a good combination, and by 1904, I had given birth to 5 children. Although we were grieved by the death of our first baby, he died on the day he was born, but he was rapidly followed by Frank Cornelius, named after my husband and my father. We called him Neil. Lauren Van Nest followed, and then Maud Ellen, who we called Dolly, and then Charles Robert, who we called Bert. As you can tell, we were a family known for nicknames. These were busy and happy times for our family, and we contributed not only to the population of Temecula, but to its enrichment as well. We had several business ventures created as the local need arose. Frank had a quarry specializing in blue granite. We also became expert in the modern art of the turn-of-the-century photography. Frank had an innate ability to figure out modern inventions and the foresight to know what would sell. He even painted the backdrops for photo sessions. We set them up at the back of our photo studio to include in portrait photos. However, since photography could hardly support a family, I more or less took over that aspect of our business, along with running the home. Frank focused more on the personal transportation business. This included selling, fixing, and providing gasoline for automobiles, as well as selling and maintaining bicycles. Frank owned one of the earliest auto garages and gas service stations in Temecula. Our garage was even mentioned in the Lake Elsinore Valley Press as early as 1910. The business expanded into general mercantile products as well as guns and ammunitions, which led to the infamous incident of December 24th, 1907 that we just heard about. Frank sold a gun to Horace McGee. Horace went right out and murdered Louis Escalier and Constable Preston von Swangen in the street near the Ramona Inn. This became a huge sensation in our small town of Temecula. The trial was held in Riverside and attracted most of the citizens of Temecula. Of course, Frank was called to testify. He told the court that he didn't know that Horace was under the influence of alcohol when he purchased the gun. If he had known that, he wouldn't have sold it to him. Another witness who had been in Frank's store testified that he knew that Horace had been drinking, but that he did not appear drunk. He said that Horace counted the cartridges in the gun and remarked that 3 were gone and seemed very rational. The notoriety of the incident did not hurt any of our businesses in the least. As word spread, people came to meet us. It even gave Frank the opportunity to provide at least 2 engraved headstones. Oh, did I forget to mention that Frank's family were stonemasons specializing in gravestones? Frank did wonderful drawings, which came in very handy for our advertising flyers as well as for gravestone etchings. His artistic talents ran in all directions, including photographic composition, and he even made his own tools. I loved photography because it gave me the opportunity to ride a bicycle all over the countryside looking for scenery and subjects to photograph. Back then, it was a challenge to cope with all the equipment needed for such an endeavor, and later on I dashed about on a motorized bicycle called a motorcycle. I never minded one bit all of the many eyebrows that were raised. A woman riding bicycles and motorcycles, oh my. Our children, oops. Our children were around and involved in all our business activities, including between our home, stores, and garage. They became not only educated in the 3 R's when they attended school, but much more broadly in life skills around our business endeavors. They learned the mechanics of automobiles and bicycles in the garage, the basics of photography in the photo studio, and merchandising in the store. They also learned the need to work hard to succeed at anything. It was 6 years before we had more children. First Edmund or Eddie in 1911, and then our lively little Molly in 1913. This is a picture of Front Street and Main Street in 1909 from the Sanborn Map Company. It displays the location of the photo studio, which is just to the left and below the livery stable. This is a picture of my camera, which our granddaughter-in-law, Leah Fernald, is taking very good care of at her house. These are busy and fairly prosperous times for our family. We even had our gas tanks installed underground. This was so much more convenient for our customers and for us too. I espouse the Christian Science principles, the teachings of which I found appealing for their emphasis on a healthy and natural lifestyle, as well as a modern approach to religion. I was not the kind of woman to be constrained by any stuffy traditions that didn't approve of the freedoms of an active modern woman to pursue her own course in life. The philosophies of Mary Eddy Baker were a good fit for me. We were generally a well-respected and well-established family when on June 1st, 1917, Frank fell ill with appendicitis. After being rushed to the hospital in Riverside, and even after surgery that night, he slowly declined and he died on June 15, 1917, at the age of 56. This was a traumatic set of circumstances and a devastating blow to our entire family. It fell on me to pick up the pieces and carry on. This left little time for grieving. Our older boys were not quite mature enough to run the garage by themselves, and little lively Molly was only 4 years old. The entire responsibility of business and family fell into my lap. I was determined not to give up. I found a mechanic, Walter Chapin, to come and work at our Temecula Valley garage with me as proprietor. I'm not sure that his ego could handle having such a strong-minded female boss. Remember that women were considered by constitution and temperament unfit to vote until 3 years later. At any rate, he felt the call to arms and left to serve in World War I. This left me somewhat in the lurch. Mechanics were scarcer than hen's teeth at that time in history. But eventually, I persuaded a reluctant Mr. Archie D. Nichols of Newport Beach to come and work for me on a temporary basis. Mrs. Nichols did not approve of this arrangement, not one bit she didn't, and by Christmas left to visit her parents in Chicago, and she never returned. I don't think our son Neil was too enthused about Mr. Nichols either. He left to attend college in Los Angeles. He returned to check on things and visit over Christmas. My mother came to visit me and my sister from Inglewood, ostensibly to celebrate my birthday on December 26th. My sister had married Ormiston Gonzalez. Some of his relatives still live in Temecula. My sister and Ormy had a beautiful ranch house along with cattle in Temecula. This is a picture of the ranch house. This is a picture inside the ranch house. And this is a picture of the cattle we had grazing on the property. Here's a picture of me, my sister, and Bessie Ormiston, our cousin. After Frank's death, I made more improvements to the garage by building a cement foundation over the underground gas tanks. However, after Frank died, the cooperative nature of our relationship with regard to our business endeavors also died with him. The effort of trying to carry the entire load of mothering and sole proprietorship of several businesses became overwhelming without close family support. In contemplating my alternatives, I made several visits to Inglewood to explore the possibility of moving my family there and renting out the garage. Also, my relationship with Mr. A.D. Nichols, or Red, as he was called because of his red hair, had become a little warmer and was a source of gossip in such a small community, and this affected our business. The temporary arrangement was initially agreed on was beginning to wear thin, and Mr. Nichols made a trip to Los Angeles on business, which I hoped had something to do with certain considerations for our future. In May 1918, things came to either a head or fruition, whichever way you look at it, and Mr. Nichols and I went to Inglewood to finalize arrangements to move there and to plan a quiet family wedding. We rented the garage in Temecula and moved to Inglewood by August of 1918. We finally married in 1924. This proved to be a kind of retirement for me. Archie was a good man and a loving father to Frank's children. He felt particularly close to Molly Beatrice because she was so young when he came into the picture. He even laid his claim to her by changing her name to Vivian Teresa Nichols. Thereafter, she became known as V. and her personality was so similar to mine that I have to admit that she and I clashed at times. Red didn't have the entrepreneurial energy that Frank had, which matched mine. So I settled into a more of a homemaking role and running the home, caring for my mother as she aged, but without ever losing my spirit of adventure and certainly encouraging it in all my children. There was always some new venture or other being hatched along with the eggs in Inglewood. Red and Lauren worked as mechanics at the Albertson Motor Company in Inglewood, but ever at the forefront of inventions, my boys built me a small biplane, and I once more caused a stir by flying around in my own airplane. That was suddenly ended when I landed at an airfield in Riverside, and my plane was confiscated for being unsafe. I continued to pursue photography more as a hobby, and as time went on, I got to enjoy my grandchildren as they entered the picture. I sense that I am moving towards the pearly gates. I will certainly not be complaining that my life was dull. I had enjoyed a fairly liberal and well-to-do upbringing before indulging my zest for adventure and new experiences by traveling west to help pioneer the frontier. This pioneering atmosphere had given me the freedom to pursue activities not always common to the fairer sex at that time in history. I married a man with similar energy and pioneering spirit who possessed the intelligence of a savvy businessman and the talent of an artist. We worked well together as a team, both in the bedroom and in business. We watched both our personalities spread themselves among our intelligent and interesting offspring to one degree or another. I had to overcome the loss of two sweethearts before the age of 38 and get myself out of those tragic circumstances into the arms of another man without wasting much time. I guess as independent as I was, marriage actually gave me more freedom to indulge my need for adventure. That's how it was in those days. I was a handsome woman too, a woman a man could be proud of, and it didn't hurt that I came with means either. Frank's unexpected death when we were full tilt in the middle of our busy and entrepreneurial life took more out of me than I realized at the time. Having to pick up all those pieces and carry on with 5 children wore me down, and I began to be attracted to a more peaceful and settled way of living. I fell easily into the benefits of living among my family in Inglewood with a good husband who went to work for someone else for a living. I was still modern, adventurous, and excited about new projects, but I was happier to support my children and grandchildren in their dreams than in energetically pursuing my own. It seems as if my life was in 3 phases: being raised in Kansas, pioneering marriage, having children, while being at the cutting edge of a new century with bicycles, automobiles, and photography in the burgeoning town Temecula. The last 20 years were spent back among the extended family in Inglewood in a more peaceful rural atmosphere. No complaints. I'm ready and happy for the next adventure, and when my time comes, I will still sign in as Trixie.